this circle right here is what I would call the relationship circle. And if I would put together a family and say, put together a home, you've got to look at this circle and say, like you ask in that All-Tech Thursday, you say, what is it about me that's keeping our relationships from going deeper? And I would text your child that today, right now. You would be amazed, I tell you would be amazed if you text your child some of these questions I'm asking, the type of conversations that you're going to be having around the dinner table. Of course, they're going to be going, what are y'all talking about at that place? They're just going to go nuts. But asking the questions it really changes the direction of your family. So here, I want to know, am I doing anything, or what's the one thing I do most that offends you? What makes you the maddest at me? When are we the most distant from one another? See what I'm saying? And I'm just going to ask, and whatever they say, I listen. They're not making it up. They're really coming up with something, whatever they say, just let them say it. You don't have to excuse it or anything else. You excuse it, what are you saying? Well, that can't be true because I'm perfect. It may be saying, you're absolutely right. Because the minute you admit it, it's done. They can't use it as an arrow to shoot at you anymore. But this is one of those circles that becomes key. It's the primary circle of the relationship. And so it's asking yourself that question. It's really asking yourself, what is it about me? Perhaps my spouse is right about the things that I do that really bug my kids or grandkids. Jan does this. She always feels like she has to have a lesson to teach at every teachable moment. And it's always got to include scripture. And my two grandkids look at me and go, oh, geez, here we go again. And what they find is, or what my wife finds is, she goes, why do they always come to you? And I go, because I wait for them to come to me. I'm not trying to force a lesson on them. They will come because they want to know. They want to know a lot more than I have a need to share. And so it's just saying, then you've got to ask yourself the question, if all your behavior is a reflection, the visible reflection of the invisible issues, what are the issues in your life where you feel like you always have to be teaching something? Like maybe you're not getting value somewhere, and so you're trying to get it through somebody else. Do you ever do that? I spend time just reflecting on how I am sometimes. Why do I do this? Why am I motivated? Why do I collect things to give them away? Why do I collect things when I've been to enough funerals and there's not one thing in that coffin rather than that body? They take nothing with them. What is it about men that like to collect things? My son and my son-in-law keep telling me, buy more guns because they know they're going to get them. But so I do. Jane goes, why'd you buy that one? Well, I don't know. They told me to. And so, but I would ask yourself the question, what is it about me? And the other thing I would ask is, how do you love your child? Years ago, in 1995, a guy by the name of Gary Chapman wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages. Do you know what the 5 love languages are? Yeah, you're not a Christian if you don't know them. And so everybody knows them. It's words of affirmation, time, acts of service, gifts, and touch. My problem is this. I don't have any time. I don't want you to come mow my yard. I really don't want any gifts from you because we have enough crap at our house that I'm trying to get rid of. I really don't believe in words of affirmation because when you do public stuff, people complain about everything. And I don't want you to touch me. And so so those aren't my love languages. And so anyway, we're recording in Chicago, like I mentioned earlier today, and we're recording in Chicago, and they came to me, and Gary has this noon program, I think. Do y'all listen to it here on Moody Radio or anything? Do you work for Moody? Are you the Chapmans? Okay. And so they said, will you be a guest on Gary's program when you're coming up recording in a couple of weeks? I said, sure, I'll be happy to do it. We'll take a break at lunch and I can go in. And so our people can leave and I'll go in. And so I'm in a studio. Gary is somewhere in North Carolina. And the other fellow who's I just lost his name. The other guy who is Chris Fabry, is the host of the program. And he's in Tucson, Arizona. But they make it sound like we're all sitting there in one room. And so I walk into the room and this lady hands me a script and said, hey, Mark, thanks for coming, but Gary likes to do everything by script. I don't do scripts. He goes, well, that's what Gary wants. And I really thought, oh, well, whatever Gary wants, Gary gets. And so that's okay. We'll do it by script. And so Chris comes on and said, hey, folks, welcome to the Relationship Hour with our host, Gary Chapman. And Gary comes on after the music and says, folks, we have a very special guest today. It's Mark Gregston. Mark, welcome to the Relationship Hour. Why, it's good to be here, Gary. And Mark, are you from Chicago? No, I'm not from Chicago. I'm from Texas. And he goes, I bet you're wearing a pair of boots. Why, yes, I am. I mean, we're going through, you have horses, don't you? Why, yes, we do. I'm sitting there going, why don't you get somebody else to read it? Nobody else would know that it's not me, but I hate the script thing. So after about 10 minutes of going through this script, where it's all scripted out, I go, Gary, I've got a question for you. I think it's a question. And Chris jumps in and says, well, Mark, why don't we kind of stick with what we kind of lined out? And I go, I know, but I think everybody would love to hear this one. And I think this would be a good thing. And Gary goes, well, Mark, what's your question? I said, well, I got a question. Do you think there's more than 5 love languages? And Gary goes, well, I've kind of encapsulated them all in one. And I go, well, we used to think there were just 9 planets. Pluto's in, Pluto's out. Pluto's in, Pluto's out. I go, we're going back and forth. I said, Gary, do you know when they discovered the first exoplanet? He goes, well, no. I said, 1995, same year that your book came out. I said, isn't that amazing? Do you know how many planets they've discovered since then? Over 5,000. They've never had me back on that program again. But here's the thing. I've spent time thinking about what my love languages are. And I know this, that my love languages are that I want to be defended by those people that I've been loyal to. There's nothing that makes me feel more loved than when somebody stands up for me. And it may be because nobody used to stand up for me, but when somebody stands up and goes, Mark would never say that. I know that's not true because he doesn't believe that. That can't be right. I know it's not right. That just makes me feel. And the other one is I want to be invited. I'm not going to show up, I promise. But I want to be invited. When somebody has a wedding, I don't get, why didn't I get an invitation? Well, there's just something about that, be included in something. And I think it's the same love languages that every teen has. They want to be invited and they want to be backed up by the people that they've been loyal to. And my encouragement is this: how are you loving your child? Are you trying to stick with the old program, the old red carpet program? Trying to love them the way you did 30 years ago? Or are you trying to figure out, maybe I need to love them differently? When Scripture says, don't lean on your own understanding, how do you think outside of that box? Because you may be trying to love your child inside the box, but they want to be loved some way out here. Because there could be 5,000 other ways to love them. That's what this relationship thing, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Text your child, am I loving you the right way? Do you think I'm connecting with you? Do I spend more time connecting or correcting? Am I really the witch that you think I am? Ask the question. Are you following me on that? Because I'm doing everything I can to save the relationship here. This is one that I think is important, and it's very simple. It's the structure. Every one of your kids wants structure. They want structure within the home. They want to know what the expectations are. And remember when we said that you move from punishment here, which is where you inflict some kind of pain in some way. And that pain, the intention of it is not to make sure that you feel good about whacking somebody or doing something. It is giving them a sense of pain, going, don't go in that direction. If you continue to go, it's not going to be good. Here, it's about discipline. And discipline is helping a child get to where they want to go and keeping them from where they don't want to end up. You follow me? Two things you've got to grab a hold of. Because when you start saying this about rules, and there's a reason why I didn't put rules first. Because most people think that you got to have the rules line. The number one question is always, what about rules? What about consequences? What can we cut off and nobody will know? You know what I mean, kind of thing. And I go, no, it comes after the relationship. And I would ask you this, what 5 things do you want from your child? Just 5. If you could say, these are the 5 things that we want from you. And everybody's in here ought to be different. It may be that I want respect. I want you to go to counseling. I want you to eat lunch, dinner, or go get coffee or something 1 day a week. I want you to complete your schoolwork on your own. If you have younger kids, I want you to spend no more than 2 hours playing Xbox or whatever it is. Following me? This is what I want from you. And then with that, you put consequences. I think respect is number 1. Let's say you have a 16-year-old, and if you're disrespectful once, you lose the car. If you're disrespectful twice, you lose the car for a month. If you're disrespectful a 3rd time, we sell it. You think that'd get their attention? Do you pay for their cell phone? Sure you do. Stop. I'll pay for it if you go to counseling. You miss counseling that week, I turn off the phone. You think that'll motivate them? I'll pay for your insurance as long as you make A's and B's. If you don't, then you got to pay for it. If you can't, car gets put up. I don't want you to be smoking pot because I smoke pot. I saw what it did, and I shared my wisdom with you, and I will never give in on that. So I don't want you smoking pot. If I catch you smoking pot, poking one of your eyes out. And second time, what's going to get their attention? What's going to go, I don't want to do that. I'm going to test you every week. And you go through it, and you line it out so that they know. And if you're caught a 3rd time, if you ever get a DUI, blah, 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 whatever it is, the consequence will have its full effect, but you're going to do something to get their attention. And so it's what 5 things do I want from them? Here's the consequences. In this book that back there, Rules and Consequences, line this out. But here's the other part of it that I think makes it kind of work. What 5 things are you going to do for your child to get them to accept these 5 things? Everybody has a price. I'm going to give up our rules on music. You can listen to anything you want. Here's a $300 pair of Beats that you're going to love. Here, if you have a 16-year-old daughter, here's $300 cash. And I want to put it in a bank account. I wouldn't do it a debit card. I wouldn't do it a credit card. Put it in checks. A check, they've got to learn about debits and credits somewhere in their life. You got to have more money than you spend. It's an easy concept. I'll give you that, and you pay for your gas, you pay for lunch, you pay for everything at school, you pay for the whole thing. Pay for all your clothes, whatever that number is. When you start adding up the amount of money you spend on your kids, you're going to find out it's a lot more than you think. If you're paying car insurance, quit paying it and add that to this amount of money you give your daughter, where she has to pay you every month on the 2nd or 3rd of the month after you put it in there. When she walks in on the second of the month after you've deposited money, and she walks in and she's got on a $300 pair of jeans that's just ripped to shreds in different places and embroidered and bedazzled and everything else. You know what your answer is to that? Those are the best looking jeans I have ever seen. Really, you like them, Dad? Like them? I love them. I wish your mother had a pair like that. What? How much did you pay for that? $300. $300? Are you serious? That's a steal. That is unbelievable. I love those things. That's good to know, Dad. Thanks. And she walks off. She turns around and she goes, hey, Dad, you think you can spot me $50 for gas? I don't have any money. Nope. Well, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. Maybe walk to school in those jeans. I mean, it's, okay. Have you ever seen a kid starve at a high school? Have you? I mean, their ingenuity will get them the food and anything they want. And I go, you think the second month when you do that, she's going to look at things differently? I'll give you a car if you can do this. If you go to counseling and meet with me once a week, that we go sit down and talk. I will, whatever it is, what would attract your child? I'll buy a 120-inch TV and remodel our garage for you to play video games if you do these things. And somebody goes, well, Mark, you're talking about spending money. Well, it's only money. Let me tell you that Heartlight is a lot more expensive than what you would spend pushing these things across the table. Are you following me? Sometimes I wonder if the families that spend the amount of money they do to have kids living with us, if they would have invested it in some things and done some things, if they could have kept that stay at Heartlight from happening. And the whole intent is going, look, I want these things from you. If you just do this, I think we'll get along great. Just 5 things, moms, not 150, okay? Dads, got to be more than 1. Dads are, don't get drunk, don't get pregnant. It's got to be more than that, okay? It's got to be more than that. And so these 5 things, here's our rules, and I'll do these 5 things for you. And I'll do this, but if you violate this, it has some strong consequences. You following me? I build the relationship. The relationship is changing, the way I engage. I'm giving them messages. There's nothing you can do to make me love you more, nothing you can do to make me love you less. I'm changing the way that I'm engaging with them because I'm now training them, which means I'm turning more over to them. I'm asking you to do these 5 things. You'll get these 5 things, so you're going to benefit. That what you're going to get far outweighs what you're going to have to spend. And so you're changing the nature of your home. You're changing it because of the relationship. You're being vulnerable. You're opening yourself up. What's happening now is that you're becoming more of an authority in your home by doing these things than when you tried to do it like this and walk around the house. As for me and my Lord, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Now they do it because out of love, out of appeal, out of relationship. But you got to be dealing with this here. And this right here is dealing with the issues. You've got to deal with the issues that's driving the behavior that you see in your child. If you have a child that's anxious, anxiety is about fear. Anxiety is something that they don't know about. Depression is something they know about. I'm depressed because I'm fat, my face is ugly, my hair's green and purple and shaved off. I don't get along with. That's something they know about. Anxiety is, I don't think I can do this. That wall is too big. I'll never get over it. Life is too much for me. I think I'm just going to isolate. 52% of kids can be diagnosed by the DSM-5, which is a diagnostic and statistics manual that counselors and docs use and psychiatrists and psychologists. 52% of kids. I've got two very anxious granddaughters. They're on medication because of it. It's so anxious they can't function sometimes. And it's just the results of the world, what it's created on them. So we got to make sure we're dealing with the issues. Make sure that you're dealing with structure and you're lining that out. Make sure you're affirming the relationship here, because that becomes key.